other interesting political news, you have Vivek Ramaswamy and Al Sharpton. Their discussion on the Ukraine gets 1.9 million views on the Twitter. Now, this was originally filmed or originally interviewed on MSNBC, but I don't have a tube TV, so, or I should clarify, I don't have cable. I do have a tube TV, but obviously everything's on the Twitter these days, so that's where it got 1.9 million views in the first 48 hours. Now, they also got 10.3 thousand likes, so not the best like ratio, about 0.54% likes, and it's not too long of a video, so I'll go ahead and I'll pull that up right here. I'll play that really quick. And this is, in terms of, Vivek does have some text before the video, so this is his text. Vivek said, quote, "I debated Al Sharpton, who says he disagrees on my position with Ukraine, but I may as well have been debating the GOP establishment, who says the exact same thing. I'll give Sharpton credit for opposing the Iraq war, which is better than we can say of the neocons. But now they've all joined forces to shamefully embrace Zelenskyism," unquote. Which, in terms of getting paid to work at home, Zelensky has won hands down. Over $100 billion last year. Well, I guess this current fiscal year, actually. In cash, as well as, physical assets, military, tanks, what have you. And that's from the U.S. alone. A lot of countries are chipping in.
I need to show you this tape. Yeah. Back in 2003, when I ran for president, and you were there to ask me a question at a forum I was doing at Harvard University. So 20 years later, now my turn to ask. Yeah. Let me first play you the tape of you and I 20 years ago. Yeah. Let's get my question here. Go ahead.
Reverend Sharpton, hello. I'm Vivek, and I want
Oh, he's got the cliche 90s look with the haircut.
to ask you, last week on the show we had Senator Kerry, and this week...
Interestingly enough, on the little description where it says Ramaswamy's name, it looks like he actually is a Republican in terms of, it says Ramaswamy R, at least the banner from this clip from 2003. That was interesting because I know some of the comments on Twitter were saying he used to be a Democrat. Again, these days, I know it seems like there's a lot of Republicans in office who are secretly Democrats, so I don't hold much value towards what party you put on your little ballot form. I really just judge you on the actual statements and, more importantly, your voting pattern, voting history.
And the week before we had Senator Edwards, and my question for you is, of all the Democratic candidates out there, why should I vote for the one with the least political experience?
Well, you shouldn't, because I have the most political experience.
Part about politics is sound bites, and that, let me know in the comments, that almost sounds like a Trump response. It's like, you don't have any experience. Actually, I do, and here's why. So, again, I might not agree with anything he says politically in terms of Al Sharpton, but fascinatingly, at the time, not a bad rebuttal if you're, it's a cable TV show.
I got involved in the political movement when I was 12 years old. And I've been involved in social policy for the last 30 years. So don't confuse people that have a job with political experience. So 20 years later, now my turn to ask you, of all the Republican
the tables have turned.
Candidates out there.
Now, thankfully, Vivek has a much better haircut these days.
Why should...
Although, obviously, still not as great as mine, which I usually get every 7 months. Obviously. Of course, impeccable. It's the best haircut, some might say, even the best Cuban hair on the planet. Hopefully that made you laugh.
Someone vote for you, the one with the least political experience. And I might add, you've never held office. You've only voted twice.
That's correct.
In the last few elections. You don't even vote regularly.
Yes.
And you support Donald Trump, who never held office until he was president. Well, you putting a different standard on me, but I won't even make the racial application there.
Everything about Al Sharpton seems to be diluted towards race, which I find morally vacuous and disgusting. This is the United States. All that matters is your morals, your values, and your output in terms of you're an employee. That's why I always like to debate people, and one of the things I always like to talk about is how capitalism defeated racism a long time ago, partially because the CEO is going to choose who's going to give me the best ROI. Especially if you're a global company, that's what you need. You need the best talent. You need the biggest sample size. I don't really care what they look like. Doesn't matter. Whether, I would say, you look for their ideological beliefs in terms of, want to make sure they have strong morals and values. And do they have the best output, the production numbers? But I digress. I'll hand it over to him again.
We vote for
Listen,
you.
at the age of 18, I think you persuaded me on that one, that political experience is not the same as holding office. To tell you the truth, the reason I came out there and I was intrigued.
Can I put out right-wing press that Sharpton converted a young, well, I don't want to take credit for
To believe outside of political experience, I'm going to tell you the truth. One of the things, I'll even give you one more for you, okay? You were the only anti-war candidate back then. I was against the Iraq War. As I recall, you were the only anti-war candidate in either party. Well, guess what? Tables turn now. I'm the only true anti-war candidate in either political party now when it comes.
Which is pretty astonishing. I mean, you wind back the clock a couple decades, and it used to be kind of a cliche that, Democrats love peace, Republicans like war. It kind of used to be a cliche. Now, again, you saw in the Republican debate, or the primary debate for the presidency, he was the only one who was actually against giving Ukraine more and more billions of dollars.
Comes to Ukraine. I believe in America First policies. I think this Ukraine war does not advance American interests. I was the only person with the courage to say that on the Republican debate stage last week. The real war I would take on is the war against the administrative state, the shadow government here at home. I think the people who we elect to run the government, once again, ought to be the people who actually run the government, not the cancerous bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. I'll have a 75% headcount reduction for all of the people who weren't elected.
Again, brilliant vernacular, especially if you're trying to gain the libertarian vote, and also a lot of people politically in the middle who just think the government's become so disgustingly bloated throughout the past couple decades, and also contributing to the overall deficit. We're now $32 trillion in debt, which, yeah, the bill is going to come up soon, and it's not going to be pretty, in my opinion.
In Washington, D.C. So this is a very different vision than you hear amongst traditional Democrats for sure, but even amongst traditional Republicans. I want to shut down the administrative state. I want to declare independence from China. I want to grow our economy by drilling and fracking and embracing energy. And I want to revive national pride in this country.
Both rare things. Back in 2019 is the first time in about 60 years the United States was energy independent. We actually exported more fossil fuels than we used. Which again, you could also achieve, I would always say, not just, fossil fuels, that's going to be the best ROI, but also get some nuclear energy up in here. That's one of the cleanest forms of energy on the planet. And technically, you could also argue recyclable and green because depleted uranium is one of the most dense substances on the planet. They actually use them for tank busters. Well, rudimentarily speaking, it goes to be the core of a projectile that can bust through a tank armor. So the military actually uses it for that. So there's actually a byproduct that is used, and you'd argue it's recyclable.
That's not a Republican idea or a Democratic vision. It is a pro-American vision. That's what I stand for in this race.
I would take issue that when I opposed the war in Iraq and going for weapons of mass destruction that wasn't there, so I ended up being right. You can't compare that to the United States supporting Ukraine defending itself against Russia. So
Look, I think there's a myth that Ukraine's actually, I think I was against the Iraq war then, but I'm consistent now. Ukraine is not some democracy that we've now painted it to be. I think
that's true. Even the most left-wing media sources, Washington Post, CNN, just look at the articles a couple years back, and consistently Ukraine was ranked as one of the most corrupt countries in Europe. And it's no coincidence that we're seeing a lot of the funding and the things we send over there kind of just disappear. I'll have a full episode on that later, trust me.
I think this is a regime that really has some serious flaws as well.
Yep. So you can. Ramaswamy was speaking over Al Sharpton a little bit, but Al Sharpton just said, well, let me rewind that. The Ukraine is strategic to the United States? Wait.
I think this is a regime that really has some serious flaws.
They're in the strategic place to the United States. Well, I know the United States public schools, got math scores at all-time low, history scores at all-time low, perhaps also geography at all-time low. Well, also most Americans probably can't post Ukraine on the map if you were to pay them $100. But in terms of military or defense, or in terms of strategically putting our resources, no, they're way the hell. No, they're over there. So no, I don't see about that. I understand they make many resources that everyone consumes. They make a lot of the fertilizers over there. Truth be told, they actually make some Porsche components as well, unfortunately. But strategic to the United States, really? How? How? Does he explain it? Probably not.
United
as well.
States, Ukraine is in
So I think I respectfully disagree with you.
strategic place where
I respectfully disagree that I do not think
surrounded.
that-
But
Where we have allies and NATO surrounded. Yeah, we have a lot of members of NATO, yeah. But they're already on the border. They're there.
all right, we can agree to disagree. on that.
Ukraine is
Let
not a
me go
NATO
to this
ally,
issue then.
and
We
Ukraine doesn't advance
disagree-
U.S. interests.
we
So that's one
disagree
of the things that's distinctive
respectfully
about
on
my
that.
views.
We disagree respectfully on that.
So, fascinating conversation. And again, it got 1.9 million views in 2 days. That's astronomically successful. And again, it's something I'm not seeing from the other political candidates as I check out their profiles and see what of their videos are going viral, which one of them are increasing the polls. Again, Vivek seems to have done really well with social media. And again, it'll be interesting to see how much does that translate to the actual polls, as again, the polls on average still have DeSantis ahead of Vivek with the exception of 1 or 2. So, and again, there's a lot of variables that go into polls. There's a lot of uncertainties. Now, if you look at the responses, I would say they're mostly in his favor. Now, you have a response from Johnson Argieta saying, quote, Al Sharpton is a race hustler. Nothing really important comes from it, unquote. That got 19.2 thousand views and 556 likes. Pretty good, given a ratio of 2.9%. Now, you also have Ashley St. Clair saying, quote, so Al Sharpton is okay with us sending Ukraine tens of billions to, quote, defend themselves against Russia, but was in the streets of my city calling for Daniel Petty to go to jail for protecting a New Yorker from a violent man who had been arrested 40 plus times. He was cordial with you, which is a positive, but man, this guy will always be bloodthirsty, unquote. Which is true. A gentleman actually defended a train of innocent people against someone who, yes, was arrested 40 plus times, was actually arrested for punching an old lady in the face, and was verbally saying he was going to kill people. This person subdued him, and of course, it became political, and they wanted to put him to jail. And now he's fighting for his life in court. Now, her response got 103,000 views and 1,091 likes, giving a ratio of 1.05%. So not too bad. You also have a response from Captain Jack, which no affiliation to Johnny Depp, unless he has a lot of time on his hands, and this is like an incognito account. It's not verified, and it's not a picture of him, but perhaps his alter ego. But I digress. Captain Jack says, quote, why is Sharpton perceived to have any wisdom whatsoever? Seems like he has only services to publicly incite racial division, unquote. That got 1,263 views and 65 likes, giving him the best ratio of all time at 5.14%, the greatest. And as I look through the other ones, I'm not, again, this might be one of Vivek's more popular tweets. You have, you have this one, Simon Wrightson saying, quote, church minister says go to war, unquote. That got 10 likes out of 1,784 views. Yeah, still Vivek, props to Vivek. So yeah, I'm trying to find an actual negative one. Kudos to you, Steve Lobson. It's a theater, it's absurd. It's time to vote. I vote for it. You have a gentleman, Ecom saying I'd still vote for Trump. I got 7 likes and 2,075 views, which again, there's a lot of people who are never Trumpers, and you have only Trumpers, like they'll only ever vote for him. Okay, here's one negative one. So you have a Final Cut MI, probably guessing Michigan resident, saying, quote, he's been bought and paid for. He got 9 likes and 2,899 views. And then someone responded saying, put some names out there. And there's no subsequent response from the original Mr. Final Cut Michigan. Someone else said, it's not rocket science, saying, quote, a conversation after all these years, no wonder Vivek was beaming. 9 likes out of 3,214 views. Another one says, go get him, Vivek. So seemed to be a good interview, not seeing too many negative responses. So in terms of Vivek's campaign, seems to be doing pretty consistently well in terms of social media. I mean, you feel like his profile, you're just having more and more of these interactions and more of these media situations where he's hitting over 1 million views on Twitter. And again, getting your name out there, getting the brand out there, that's a huge part of politics that, again, I'm not really seeing from the competition, with the exception of Trump, when, there's a lot of people thinking Vivek is just going for the VP position. That's a debate in and of itself. My 3 cents, again, it used to be 2 cents, but 40-year hyperinflation, I should charge 4 cents, but just my 3 cents today. Though it is still free to click that subscribe button. And I think realistically that's what he's going to go for, which is why he's been very strategic with his vernacular. He's one of the only Republican nominees who hasn't actually been aggressive or talking too pejoratively around Trump. You have, Chris Christie, whose whole campaign is to be negative against Trump, and he's getting supporters because of that stance. Most of the other Republicans are more, they're negative against Trump, but they're not being too negative in their vernacular. They're not calling him names. They're being more like, hey, he's a pass, we're done, it's not us. Like, much more of a passive-aggressive, some might say, approach. So it'll be interesting to see, will this translate to the polls as we have more and more of these interesting statistics come out? At what point do you have him, will he consistently start rating ahead of DeSantis in the polls? Because again, it's happened a couple times, but on average, it seems like DeSantis is still a little bit ahead of Vivek in these presidential primary polls. That, I think, will be interesting to see as these weeks keep going. And of course, politics is a long game. A lot of things could happen because there's a lot of time. But it'll be interesting to see. And I would say, time shall tell. Thank you again for taking the time to tune in. Try and get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September. I know it's a tall order, but if you click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you take the time to like and comment, the feedback is also appreciated. Try to make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.